Hello, and welcome to Natasha Explains It All. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about two recent class action cases that have resulted in some really cool advancements in the area of LGBTQ rights and also public benefits. And um, there may be listeners who are eligible for the benefits that these cases help secure, or you may know someone who could benefit. So, I want to help spread the word about these cases and the amazing gains that are the result of these two cases that were brought by an organization called Lambda Legal. So these two cases, one is called Eli v. Saul, and the other case is called Thornton versus Commissioner of Social Security. Both of these cases are about Social Security survivors' benefits. So I think a lot of people are familiar with how Social Security works in that throughout your working life, money is withheld from each of your paychecks to be later paid out to you once you retire as a form of retirement income. So it is a public benefit that you earn over the course of your working life. And so when you retire, there's money set aside for you that you receive on a monthly basis as your Social Security income. Now, Social Security survivors benefits, as the name implies, is in the event that you die before retirement, or anyway, the point is that if you die before being able to receive um, all of all of your Social Security that's been set aside for you that you've earned, well, then that money that you've earned, instead of going to you because you have passed, will go to your surviving spouse and your surviving dependents, like your children, which makes sense, right? You earned this money, it was set aside with each paycheck over the years that you worked. And now that unfortunately you will not be able to use that money, the money will then go to your surviving spouse and your surviving dependents. Now, um, there's for most of the existence of Social Security and Social Security survivors benefits, gay couples have been excluded from being able to receive these benefits. And why is that? Well, I was using the word spouse specifically because to collect Social Security survivors benefits, you have to have been the spouse of the person who passed away. Um, but for the almost entirety of US history and almost the entirety of the Social Security survivors benefits program existence, gay marriage has not been legal. Social Security survivors benefits became a thing in 1939, and the the constitutional right to gay marriage, um, as recognized under the federal constitutions that applies nationwide, was only recognized in a 2015 Supreme Court case called Obergefell. And so that's that's a many decades gap there between when uh, Social Security survivors benefits first became a thing. So a surviving spouse could collect their spouse's Social Security, and when people who for people who were are in uh, gay partnerships could become eligible for the same benefits. So these two cases are trying to address that gap, that multi-decade gap of 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 those people who were in queer relationships who were denied Social Security survivors benefits for no other reason than the fact that they weren't legally allowed to get married, but in any other frame, like they were a married couple. They just weren't legally allowed to get married. and therefore were not eligible upon one person's death for the other person to collect Social Security survivors benefits. So there's two cases that are slightly different, but both of them are about this topic, about creating, about ending the discrimination against gay couples in terms of their eligibility for Social Security survivors benefits, which again have been earned. Money is taken out of each of your paychecks to set aside this money for when you retire. So the first case is called Eli v. Saul. And Eli v. Saul addresses a portion of the requirements for Social Security survivors' benefits. I mentioned that one of the requirements is you have to have been married to the person who died. There's an additional requirement that you have to have been married to the person for at least 9 months at the time that the person passed away for you to be able to collect their Social Security money. Now, the original reason for this sounds like there was like good intent. They were trying to avoid sham marriages where like someone would get married on their deathbed, so that someone could take advantage of someone on their deathbed and like do a sham marriage just so that they could collect, right, that person's Social Security. But in practical terms, for people that were in queer relationships, this caused a problem because, again, gay marriage has not been legal for most of the entirety of the existence of Social Security survivors benefits. And unfortunately, there are many people who got married as soon as gay marriage was legal, but one person in the marriage passed away before they reached that 9-month mark. And so it seems unfair that they would be denied Social Security survivors benefits because the only reason they didn't get married sooner was because it was legally impossible to do so. So the main plaintiff in the Eli v. Saul case is a guy named Michael Eli, and he and his partner, James Taylor, who goes by Spider, they had been together since the 1970s. And yet they weren't able to get legally married until 2014, which is when gay marriage became legal in Arizona, where they lived. And so, as soon as, gay marriage became legal in their state, they got married. But unfortunately, Mr. Taylor, I think he had cancer, he passed away before they had been married for 9 months. And when Mr. Eli went to apply for Social Security survivors benefits, he was denied on the basis of this rule, right? That, well, they hadn't been married for 9 months when he applied. And they hadn't been married for at least 9 months at the time that his spouse died. And so the Eli v. Saul case is trying to address this because, look, Mr. Eli and Mr. Taylor would have been married way, way, way long ago. Again, they've been together since the 1970s, but it wasn't possible. But for the ban on gay marriage, they would have been married, and Mr. Eli would have been eligible for Social Security survivors benefits. And so this case challenged that, and they were successful on it. So now the Social Security Administration, which is a federal government agency that administers Social Security benefits, including survivors benefits, now can no longer categorically, deny survivors benefits to those who've been married, who were married for less than 9 months at the time of one of the spouses passing. You have to plead your case, but basically to just establish that, but for the ban on gay marriage, you and your spouse would have been married for at least 9 months at the time of their passing, and therefore you are eligible. So this is really huge because that means that, for all of those couples who, got married after gay marriage became legal, but unfortunately, their spouses passed away um, less than 9 months after they got married. The surviving spouse is now eligible to collect those Social Security survivors benefits. Um, and the next case, Thornton v. Commissioner of Social Security, again, is also about Social Security survivors benefits, but addresses that prior in terms of timeline group of people. Meaning, well, what if you were in a committed gay relationship and were, married except, in except legally because gay marriage was not legal, and unfortunately one of the people in the relationship died before gay marriage was legal, so you never even had the option to be married, much less be married for 9 months, to be able to meet the requirements. So, to give a concrete example of this, the named plaintiff in this case, Thornton, comes from Helen Thornton. And she and her partner, Marge Brown, had also been together since the 70s and would have gotten married had gay marriage been lawful, but it wasn't. And unfortunately, Marge passed away before gay marriage was legal in the state of Washington where they lived. Excuse me. So Helen and Marge had been together since the 1970s, and unfortunately, Marge died in 2006. So at that point, right, they had been together for 27 years, and uh, Helen, who was the surviving partner, was not eligible to receive Social Security survivors benefits because she and Marge had not been were not married. And gay marriage only became legal in the state of Washington 6 years later in 2012. And so this case is talking about the unfairness of that, because had Helen and Marge been able to get married, they would have. And then there would have been no question that Helen would have been able to collect Social Security survivors benefits, once she reached retirement age because of, Marge's passing. And so this was also a successful case, and the court ruled, like in Eli v. Saul in this Thornton case, ruling that, yeah, like, this is discriminatory, and this is there can't be these categorical bans anymore as it applies to gay couples, because but for the ban on gay marriage, these people would have been married and would have been eligible for Social Security survivors benefits. So, um, th- this case in particular um, um, has affects thousands of people, including probably thousands of people who are eligible but haven't applied yet, don't know that they're eligible. So, again, for this group, the Thornton people, this is if you have a queer couple who were where one person died before gay marriage was legal, and the surviving spouse, right, or the surviving partner, right, hasn't received Social Security survivors benefits because, they weren't legally married. And if the you have to establish to the Social Security Administration that you had gay marriage been legal, you would have gotten married. And it's basically a but for situation, right? But for the gay marriage being illegal, you would have been married, and then you would have been eligible for these benefits. And so we want to spread the word. And so there's probably lots of people out there who, were together with their partner and were, in any other terms, married, but they just couldn't legally do so, but that are now eligible for Social Security survivors benefits. So I'm going to include in the show notes a link to a page on the Lambda Legal website that has very detailed FAQs about each of these cases so that you can read more. You can better understand the eligibility and the application process. The like short version of it is that you contact the Social Security Administration, and a field officer will come out and do an interview with you, to basically evaluate, whether you have a legitimate claim. And um, one thing I learned that was interesting is like the Social Security survivors benefits have long applied to common law marriages. And so these types of interviews have been going on for a long time, and now they're just basically expanding, the pool of people that they would do these interviews with. And what I mean by that is that in some states recognize something called a common law marriage. A common law marriage is when you've been together with someone, living together with someone after a certain number of years. I think like 7 is a pretty typical year, a number of years, but it varies. Basically, if you've lived with your partner for a certain period of time, there's like a default recognition under the law that you are married, even if you didn't actually like go through the steps to formally get married. And so, in those, what they call common law marriages, when it comes to someone applying for Social Security survivors benefits, the Social Security Administration has already been doing this types of thing to like verify that, like, okay, you are basically in the equivalent of a marriage and therefore you're eligible. So that's kind of the same in terms of the work that the Social Security Administration would do to verify these claims for those who, right, in the Thornton class, never got married because they could not legally get married because gay marriage was not legal, or in the Eli class, for those people who were able to get married because gay marriage had become legal, but unfortunately, one of the spouses died within 9 months of being able to be legally married. And I say class because both of these cases were class action cases. Both of them are federal class action cases to bring benefits to many. And one of the things I find so fascinating about these cases is, so I was mentioning at the beginning of the episode how Social Security survivors benefits are earned. It's an earned public benefit because you pay into it, right? With each paycheck, there's money withheld that you will then get paid out, that will then be paid out to you once you have hit the like the official retirement age, and then you'll get monthly payments, for the rest of your life. And again, the Social Security survivors benefits, like a program, as a right, has existed since 1939. So that's more than 80 years that there that the federal government has withheld money that is properly owed to queer people in the United States. And I don't know what that number is, right? But I mean, it's got to be a crazy amount of money that should have been paid out, right, to the survivor of a queer relationship, but was not, because they weren't eligible. And the sad thing is that I'm sure there are tons of people who would have been eligible, well, who like are eligible under this new framework under Thornton, but both people have now died, right? Because I mean, Social Security survivors benefits have been around since 1939. And so how much money has been missed out on, and how life-changing that could be um, for generations of people. And the federal government has held on to that money that was earned by queer people in the United States. I don't know, I think about that like massive wealth transfer that happened there, and how these two cases are trying to undo at least to some degree, right, that unjust and discriminatory wealth transfer from queer people to the federal government and getting that money back into the hands of the people who earned that money. Um, and, how life changing that can be for people as a form of steady fixed income, for the remainder of their lives. So, anyway, just on that note, I'm going to wrap it up. And again, in the show notes, I'm going to include information, a link to Lambda Legal's website so you can do more reading for yourself about these cases and like how to apply if you think that you're eligible or you know someone who might be eligible. Yeah, just really cool legal work and really important legal work. So I'm using this episode to help spread the word about these important cases, and I hope that you will help me in doing that, so that everyone who is eligible for Social Security survivors benefits who was previously denied or wasn't even able to apply, because gay marriage was not legal, can now apply or reapply and get what they deserve. So yeah, so a hopeful note for today. So thanks for listening and see you next time.